As we saw in the module for task processing considerations, similar tasks can't be run simultaneously, but can only be run sequentially. There are times you might get a question from a customer as to why all devices have not been updated to the correct firmware. Troubleshooting these tasks can be done using the task log. The first step is to get a list of the remote firmware updates and to determine how long they take. Go to the task log, filter on configuration tasks, and find the tasks in the list that have remote firmware updates. The first item on this list has several remote firmware update tasks. Let's check a few other tasks. None of them have remote firmware update tasks, so let's go back to the first one. We will export this list as a CSV file. When we open the CSV file in Excel, notice that several of the tasks have the same start and end time. This is because of the format of the cells. To change the format, select all the relevant cells and go to Format, Cells. Notice in the cell format it shows the month, day, year, hour, and minute. We may also want to see the seconds, so we will add a :SS at the end of the field. Now when we OK the format, we can see the seconds as well. This may be important when we are configuring a lot of devices and we need to see the exact start and end times. When scheduling remote firmware update tasks, remember that only one configuration task can be run at the same time, so you will need to account for all devices that will be run in the single task. If you have bandwidth issues for some locations, for example, you might want to run them as separate tasks so as not to slow down the faster configuration tasks. Keep in mind, however, that if one of your tasks is expected to be completed after the next task is supposed to start, the second task will not begin. This chart will show what will happen to the tasks. If task 1 runs longer than the specified start time for task 2, it will skip task 2 and go on to task 3. It will not try task 2 again until it comes around again in the cycle, and only then if task 1 has completed. This is why it is important to determine how long the tasks will take before scheduling the next ones. If you use the Rico software server for firmware upgrading, the exact time necessary for updating a firmware relies on the device model, the current firmware set on the device, the number of devices, and the network bandwidth. For this reason, it might be best to check all of these factors before upgrading. We may not be able to rely on past experience to determine the length of time necessary for the update. The other option is to first do a check task to have the firmware pulled down to the DMNX repository and to do the firmware upgrade from there. One way you can plan for upgrading a fleet of devices is to develop a spreadsheet similar to this one. When you run some test upgrades, you can record the time it takes to perform them. Then find the average for each model. You can then develop a task to upgrade just that model, or you can add additional models to see which one takes the longest. As you can see here, we found the longest average time and calculated based on that. We multiply the number of machines by the highest average time to get the total number of minutes, and then we divide by 60 to get the number of hours required to update the entire fleet. Because DMNX can talk to up to 10 devices at a time, you can divide the total number of hours by 10 to get the required time for the update. As we change the number of devices, our total hours change. The administrator can then make a decision on whether to update the entire fleet at one time or to split the devices into several update sessions.